Welcome to our session today. We're going to look at the AI assessment scale, and we're calling this session 2.0. Some of you may have attended a session we did recently that was August 14th, where we looked at the AI assessment scale and looked at examples and talked about the examples at different levels. Of course, about a week or so after that session, a revised version of the AI assessment scale came out. So that was, a little bit perplexing, but also an opportunity to then look at the revised scale that I'll talk about, and I'll talk about the source of that scale, and think, okay, how could we then shift the examples to align with the new scale to stay current, and then also at the same time created many more examples. So we have new things to share today, even if you attended last time, and then also a new look at a cross-section of an assignment across levels. And we'll give you a link to everything that you see today toward the end of our session. So as usual, don't feel like you need to take extensive notes. We'll be putting links into the chat at times. You'll be getting a copy of the slides afterwards automatically and a copy of the recording automatically. And we also collate the chat and other resources that are shared amongst the community. So please use the chat, and then we share that back out with our posting of the webinar. All right, so let's dive in and look at some of these strategies for student AI use in our assessments. I guess I'll back up introductions for those that don't know me. I'm Brett Christie, and I'm VP for Educational Innovations and Inclusivity at Alchemy. I've been with Alchemy for 4 years, and before that was in higher education for 25 years as faculty and faculty developer at the campus, and also at the system level in the Cal State system. So just a little bit of background there, and I'm excited to share what we've prepared. So we'll check in with AI adoption patterns. That will be a little bit of you being able to share where you are with AI, but also looking at what some of the recent research tells us. It's always good to keep track of that, to know what faculty are doing, staff are doing, admin, and students, and what's the workplace situation. We're going to look at the AI assessment scale, and I want to make sure to give attribution to Perkins, Furs, Rowe, and McVow. Again, this is the 2024 version, which they're still going to continue to evolve it with input and the research that they're doing. But this is a current look here. And we'll look at practical examples, very detailed examples. And then we'll also have conversation through chat and otherwise. And then we'll look at sharing resources toward the end of the session. Okay, great. So let's go into a little bit about how we frame AI. For most of the time that we've been talking about AI, we've been framing it as this creative companion. So you are in charge, and you're working with AI to do different things in your role-related tasks. The AI is not going to be something that takes the lead necessarily, though you can certainly push it very far out there to do a lot of work for you. It's still up to you to do the thinking of what it can do, what it should do, and then checking that work and being able to implement it accordingly, making sure that it's ethical and equitable use that you're doing AI. Okay. And so we want to try and model that through the examples from the instructor perspective, but also in the assessments, we certainly want to model that for what students do with AI and how they are accountable. So let's focus very briefly on instructor readiness for AI assessment. Now, we know in our sessions that we get not just instructors, we get instructional or learning designers, we get faculty developers, we get people who are in more administrative roles, all sorts of different roles, but we're going to kind of focus in on the instructor perspective and readiness for AI here. And so we want to get your response to this poll, and I'll just read it briefly here. How comfortable are you with integrating AI into student assessments? Maybe that's you as a designer working with instructors to develop these assessments, or maybe it's you as an instructor. Go ahead and respond to that 4-point scale from very comfortable down to very uncomfortable. And we see that populating pretty quickly. We're at about half response rate, great. And I see it's still moving quickly, so I'm going to hold on here. Okay, we've popped over 3/4 and it seems to have stalled. So let's go ahead and post the results here and take a look. And if we didn't wait long enough for you, go ahead, you can put in a 1, 2, 3, 4 in chat if you felt like it. Okay, so in looking at the results here, and Kelly, do we have the histogram that we can share up there? If not, I can verbally do it. So what we ended up with for very comfortable, 14%. That's okay. You'll see some of the data that would definitely align with that. Somewhat comfortable, we've got 46%, so almost half of you in that somewhat comfortable range. And then somewhat uncomfortable, 34%. And then very uncomfortable, 6%. I expected that very uncomfortable one to be a very low percentage based on this being a bit of a biased group, meaning that you've shown up because you have an interest in AI most likely. So I expected that to be small, but I kind of wanted to see where the 1s, 2s, and 3s were. But we still have a lot of, if you look at the top 2 levels, we do have about 60% that are at some comfort level, but mostly in the middle. Okay, great. And we will post that into the slide after the session when we go out to share. And let me go ahead and click. Okay, let me close that and move on. And feel free to share any comments related to the scale. Okay, so let's briefly look at, you saw what you said as a group, and then let's look at some adoption patterns according to some recent studies that are out there. And I've shortened this from last time. If some of you did attend the last session, I've shortened this a little bit. I want to keep this focused and get us moving into AI in action a little bit more. 40% of faculty, and this is from spring data published this past summer, 40% said they are familiar with AI. That's a pretty low bar. That's still the minority of faculty, and it's also a very low bar to say familiar with. To me, that doesn't give much of a sense of AI literacy, comfort, knowing how to use it, knowing how to guide students in using it, knowing how to integrate it within assignments, assessments, and experiences. So that's very low. Only 18% said they understand teaching implications of Gen AI. So when you get to deeper understanding of it and applying it, very small percentage, less than 1 in 5. 42% do not allow any Gen AI use, and you can see the concerns there, which are very common. The concerns there are not because of AI. These concerns have been around forever as far as assessments. It's just that AI is that new variable that is so big and moving so quickly, and that we're trying to catch up to as a whole. So there you see that we're at about half almost that are not allowing any Gen AI use in their courses. So thinking of that last stat as we go to the next slide, where we think about students' preferences and employers' preferences. So 70% of students believe basic Gen AI training should be integrated into their courses. Our session today can show how that can be done to varying degrees and have it be very constructive. 55% of them said their degree programs didn't prepare them for workplace tech tools, AI and otherwise. If you look at the employer side of things, 62% believe grads should have foundational knowledge of Gen AI. And then 58% are more likely to interview and hire those with AI experience. So previous slide, very low level overall knowledge of AI and applying AI. And then this slide, there being the student desire to have those skills and knowledge, and for the employers looking for that for their candidates. So we have to reflect on, why are we not at the levels that students and employers want? Well, it's a big lift. I understand that, and I want to appreciate that. I had to take a very, very deep dive into AI a couple of years ago, well, a year and a half ago, and really just decide I was going to commit and get up that learning curve. And so I know it takes a lot, and a lot of faculty haven't been maybe properly supported to do so. Even though the CTLs are offering different sessions and types of things, it's also, how do you bring it into your workload? How do you bring it into your knowledge and into your literacy and into your behavioral pattern? That's another thing about AI, is it's a behavioral shift, not just a technology. So that's enough on the statements related to some of the findings there. And we'll take that forward as we think about some of the examples. So the first step that most institutions took, again, almost 2 years ago, November 2022, when Gen AI was released to the public, most institutions scrambled right away to have an institutional policy. And then in January of 2023, we started seeing at that spring and winter term, we started seeing course AI policies come up. And course AI policies are important, but I want people to think about that just being a general parking spot for students and you to start thinking about AI and how it relates to your course and your activities. But you need to be able to go much deeper. So we'll look at those examples here as well. So I want to give credit to Lance Eaton, who back in January of 2023 created this spreadsheet. He created a form where people could submit their course AI policy, and then that submission went into a spreadsheet that people could access. And so we have the spreadsheet available for you. At that time in January, there were about 40 of those that came out right away for those that were kind of at the leading edge of implementing their course policies. And now, as of this week, there are about 150 examples there. And you can now sort those by course, by discipline, by institution. You can look at all the different examples there. And so what I want to do is, and we'll get you those links there. What I want to do is just look at a representative sample. So I did an AI analysis of all 150, and I asked for a representative sample in length and context. And this is what a representative sample looks like. So the note about AI and ChatGPT, the instructor letting students on occasion, we will be using AI in this course. So it's starting to give them some framing language about, okay, AI is going to happen in this course. We want to start thinking about this. It must be cited, take screenshots and include them. Again, this is at the course level. We're going to talk about doing it at the assessment level to make it more specific, because some of these statements are a little bit too broad still. They're kind of gray strokes here. They're going to be hard to stand behind. It's important to note any AI use. When any AI use is more than technically plagiarism, regardless of how you're using it. This instructor has the stance that you're pulling from other people's information and other people's data, and so you really need to account for that and attribute that. And then AI should be a tool. It shouldn't be the means necessarily for your submission. And then the last one to me is hard to measure. Your work may include up to 20% AI. Is that character count if it's a text-based resource? Is it time? Is it the output versus the input? So that one to me would need to be really clarified again at the assignment level. And again, we'll look at those examples, but that's the examples that you can see at that spreadsheet would vary anywhere from this one being, again, the median type example, to some that are very short statements added to the academic integrity statement that already exists for the campus, which is kind of my philosophy, is add AI as a factor in the academic integrity statement, then bring it into the specific assessments and assignments so it's more specific, because sometimes you don't want AI in an assignment. Sometimes you may want a lot of AI in an assignment, where this is a bit too broad and it's more of a blanket statement. I've seen some of these syllabus statements that are multiple pages. So if students are already not reading the syllabus, there's now more for them not to read in some cases. So again, how can you bring it forward into the work that they do and be more specific for that purpose today? So then let's shift to AI at the assessments level. So this is a scan, again, of the AI assessment scale, and you'll see that abbreviation occasionally, AI-AS. And again, giving attribution to Perkins et al. For the work that they've done the last year and a half or so with the AI assessment scale and evolving it here. So level 1 is where there's no AI. You're supposed to be doing it entirely without AI at any process in that assignment and for the submission. It's all based on your skills and knowledge. That is obviously tricky to do, to get students to do it without an AI entirely. And it's going to depend on the type of assessment and the stakes that are involved. Is it a high stakes assessment? They're going to be more likely to want to lean on AI for something like that. And then how do you account for that? That's difficult to do. We'll show some examples here. You can do the best that you can by designing the assignment to hopefully bring in as much of the student as possible. I think of Michelle Casorla at Georgia Tech. She does a great job in her writing courses in getting students to really bring in more of themselves and making sure that that's accountable. And she's very conversational with her students about AI and the process. Anyway, moving on to second level, AI for planning, so they can use that for outlining and idea development and things like that, doing some initial research to find sources that can help inform their thinking. But their final submission is going to have to show how they've developed and refined any of those initial ideas. AI collaboration, they can go much more deeply with AI as a partner in drafting text, helping to refine it and evaluating their work. And then they need to critically evaluate and modify any of the AI generated content that they use. And you'll see in these assignment examples how these different levels are accounted for and what sorts of steps are taken, and then what sorts of documentation in parallel with AI. And then full AI, they use it extensively throughout their work, however they wish. They focus on directing AI to achieve the goals while demonstrating their critical thinking. So you're still wanting to hook in their critical thinking and their knowledge with the AI, but they can really use AI to push things forward. And the last is to really get creative in exploring new possibilities with AI, new paradigms, new solutions, new outcomes. And so I'll look at an example there with you. And then what's new today that I didn't do last time is I'll look at one assignment type and look at it across the 5 levels, where first what I'm going to do is go level by level and give you different discipline type examples at different levels, course levels. Just because I want to try and give as much diversity of representation of types of assignments and disciplines. And then you'll see what I'm not demonstrating today, as I'll also list those along the way. And again, that's a lot, and it's a lot of resources, but at the end, you'll have one link to all of it as a bundle. The name of the writing instructor at Georgia Tech is Michelle Casorla. Let me take a moment just to type that in. And we've actually had her on as a presenter. She's phenomenal. And she's a great one to follow if you're interested in seeing how people are rethinking courses in light of AI, particularly writing courses. Okay, so thinking about no AI, and I'm looking at Christina's comment, and it looks like a good one here. Yeah, Ali, exactly. There's a link to Michelle's Substack. Thank you. Great example of the chat here. Thank you for sharing, Christina, Ali, and others. Okay, so with no AI, we've already said it must not be used at any point, and it needs to have no presence in the student submission. So what does that look like? Here's just a snapshot. So this is an example for writing a reflective essay, let's say in ethics at a 100 level. Again, 100 level writing, this is where students have to prove that they have the skills at that level of course. So you want it to be about them and them demonstrating their skills completely without AI. So let's get down to the constructive use. The assignment encourages students to connect theoretical concepts with their personal experiences, deepening their understanding of ethics. So how to manage AI, the students maintain a process journal documenting their brainstorming, drafting, and revisions to ensure the work is entirely their own. A bit on AI detection, as we talk about the no AI level, do not lean on AI detection. It doesn't work effectively, and it's also biased. And you've probably heard many of those references before, but just to iterate, my stance is relying on detection is going to be very problematic. It's really a matter of rethinking how things can be done around AI. Okay. All right, so and certain tools can be used to give students feedback showing where there may be issues of plagiarism. And those have been around for a while, and that's where you can still use that type of detection to have the students analyze it maybe and reflect, because you don't want to try and detect, because there are things like the Humanize AI app, which will take output and make it into text that's undetectable by these AI detectors. And so it's this cat and mouse game of the technologies advancing on both sides, and us and students are kind of caught in the middle, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so I go back. So on each of these slides, and you'll get a copy of the deck, but you also get the actual resources in one bundle, but you would be able to go to the deck if you wanted to and go through them just as I'm going through today. But I think you would be better served to just access the bundle link that I'll give you at the end. So this is each of these that I'll show you today. I'll have this common header showing you what the context is and which AI level it is and a given attribution. And then now we get down to the assignment title. And here's where you could put in your due date. You would be able to copy and paste things like this and then edit them for your uses with any of these examples. So here's the assignment overview for students, giving them that goal, that sense of purpose for the assignment. There's a lot of text, and we're covering a lot of text today, so I don't want to read all of these to you, and we'll get to some more interaction. Objectives, that's letting the students know what's to be achieved. And then we get to the instructions. So think about a real life situation where you faced an ethical dilemma. This could be situation, personal life, work, school, or community involvement. So again, a strategy to try and eliminate AI as much as possible is to bring in the personalized as much as possible, the reflection, the connections, those types of things. If a student is really good at AI, they can still game that a bit, certainly as well. But as you get to know your students, hopefully you're able to get to know your students, then you can tell what's coming from them and their experiences and their voice. And that's another thing that Michelle Casorla talks about, is how to bring in voice, that presence. They begin brainstorming their ideas for the essay. They're documenting that. They're creating their outline. That's going to be something that they submit. Now, eventually, they're writing that reflective essay. So it gives them the sections that they're to complete. Fairly traditional there. What's newer here is this process journal, where you're asking students to maintain that process journal. And I think there's good to that, but we also have to be cautious, because as we are managing AI use and trying to check students and maybe limit AI use in some cases, are we dumping more workload on them because of that accountability? So we have to be careful with workload burden when we add additional things like, oh, you're still doing a 5-page paper, but you're doing a 2 to 3 page journal along the way. So just my 2 cents there. And there's the process journal and how they're informed by that. And then the final submission. So here are the evaluation criteria. Again, this is no AI, so pretty straightforward how it's broken down. You always want to give students, of course, support resources. These are not AI related, and then academic integrity is a footer statement on each of these. I like the audio explanation. Yeah, so that's going to depend on the tools that your students are comfortable with. Thank you, Jennifer. That's a great way to augment it. And it also gives something besides just the written format. It allows students to express themselves differently. And some of you who know me know my 20-year background with UDL. And I'm always loving when I see, yes, different forms of expression and how that can complement the core assignment. Okay, so let's go into, and you can see, for example, one, these are the other ones that are available to you. So those may map closer to the types of assignments or to your discipline or your level, hopefully. But you can see a cross-section of those. That's level 1. There are 6 examples that you can access in full detail. Okay, let's look at level 2, AI for planning. So again, they can use it to help them develop ideas and outline and do the initial research for them to suggest the best resources, and then they can move forward with those. Okay, so for an example here, let's look at a research proposal. This happens to be sociology 300 level, let's say. So they're assigned to develop that research proposal on a contemporary social issue, and they're allowed to use AI to assist in brainstorming and structuring. Let's see, AI use, I think you get that already with what's being said. And then as far as constructive use, it can help them create a clear, well-organized framework, and allows them to focus on refining research questions and then writing the comprehensive proposal. And then in managing it, students submit the AI-assisted outline and a reflection on how AI influenced the planning process alongside their independently written proposal. So let's see that in an assignment statement. Hopefully people are seeing how everything from the assignment title on down could be put into your LMS assignment page for students to be able to access and have very detailed information. And I'll pause here as we start getting into AI becoming more into the assignments and structured into the assignments and the actual assessment and accountability. Reflect back to that course level statement example and how broad it was and those gray strokes in there. This is actually bringing it in here so they can see it and how it should happen in their work, or how it should not happen in some cases. So again, assignment overview, it's giving them the context, the broader goal. And then objectives, you've got that there, and you can see AI starts to appear in those objectives. And then their instructions, they are to do their topic selection. They can do some AI-assisted brainstorming, critical refinement, and then down to the research proposal. I'll pause there for a second. I see a great statement, Teresa, about transparency. That is always the best thing. And that's why I didn't do it in each of these for potential overkill, but I didn't add rubrics in here, and that adds even greater transparency. So students know what they should be doing and how they're going to be assessed as clearly as possible. So yeah, always love to see transparency. Okay, so here are, again, 10 to 12 page research proposal. And then their reflection and documentation. And again, if we're adding 2 to 3 pages of reflection, are we adding another 20, 25% workload on top? So, again, think about that factor of workload. Where might you adjust things to account for that? Because we already know that workload can be an issue. Okay, and then their final submission, and there's the breakdown of the criteria. And again, that's where you would want to have a rubric of levels of performance for each of those criterion. And now that we see AI appearing as a factor in these assignments, you'll see how you can list your respective support resources that students would have access to on your campus. Okay, so I'm going to keep us going into other examples. I see that we're about half past, and I don't know that we'll do the full hour since this is a refresh from last time, but we probably will. And then here's a couple other examples that I have for level 2 AI planning that you can explore. Okay, level 3 collaboration. This is where AI becomes much more of a partner. They can use it to assist with specific tasks that you designate. It can draft text for them. They then refine it. It helps them refine things that they've drafted, and it can actually even give feedback and evaluate their work and help them to rethink things and make it better. They need to evaluate and modify any AI-generated content they use, and you can see how that's built into the process in just a moment. Okay, so let's look at policy brief, poli-sci example, 400 or so level. They're going to write a policy brief on a current international issue. And let's see, as far as AI use, they can use it to draft the brief and refine arguments, but they need to critically evaluate and adjust the content for coherence and accuracy and final presentation. As far as constructive use, it's going to help them to streamline that drafting process and get into the analysis process more, get further up blooms sooner. And that's something I always like to bring up is level of blooms is, can reflect to how you use AI. And just as a side reference, Oregon State University released an update to their AI and blooms resource, which is really great. And I haven't had a chance to look at the latest version, but I'm excited because the first one was very thought-provoking. They do great work, and I'm sure this second one is even better. I'm sure it's very strong. So that's if somebody has that reference in the chat, feel free to share it. Oregon State University, AI and blooms. So think about that as you're thinking about AI. And we may do a session related to that in the near future, never know. Okay, so let's go into the assignment example in a little bit more detail, and you can see how AI evolves further. Again, we've got the assignment title, the overview to give them a sense of the goals. And again, AI is starting to populate into the overview, but also into the objectives. Okay, I won't over text you, so I'm going to scroll down a little bit further. Thank you, Laura, for sharing that in the chat. Great. Okay, so there's their issue selection and research that they're doing, the AI-assisted drafting, and then where they need to dig in and critically evaluate and refine. And then they'll be documenting and showing where they've done that again through a reflection. And one thing I would encourage, and I haven't developed this yet, is as you're asking students to reflect, to do a journal, try and create a scaffold, a template for them to do so. That's going to help because then you're going to get a form that's more consistent for you to be able to then review or analyze, rather than if you have 50 students and you just tell them keep a journal, then that journal and sometimes is going to be in different formats, and sometimes it's not going to meet the standards you intended. So give them a little bit of a framework and some prompts along the way. And hopefully that'll increase the quality and reduce the workload a little bit for your students in the process. Okay. I'm showing you here, let's see. Again, I don't want to overdo content on you, but I want to be able to show you, some of the examples, and these are pretty thoroughly thought out here. And now it's a matter of making them actionable, and then you being able to enhance them based on how it's working for you or not working, and be able to tweak things. But these provide a really good starting point for thinking about it at the individual assessment level. Because you don't necessarily want to say that your whole class is going to be level 3. You may want to start at level 1 and over the term of the semester increase to level 5 as you're comfortable, or you may move around the scale a little bit depending on the type of assessment. Maybe at midterm it's one where it needs to go back to level 1 where it's a check-in. Okay, let me jump back. And you can see a couple of other examples that are there: the technical report for engineering and strategic plan for management. Okay, let's look at level 4, which is full AI. And that was level 5 on the prior scale, because now there's the new level coming up, the next level 5 that we'll show in just a minute. So students are free to use it throughout to support their work. They don't have to specify which content is AI generated in their submission. They should be referencing that they used it, and they should also keep a detailed report of their interactions with AI. So there's still some reflection that can take place, and there's certainly accountability that AI was involved, and it can be documented and referenced along the way. But they don't have to show full transcripts part by part as far as what they did along the way. So they're going to conduct this data analysis on a given data set. They use AI to clean the data, check the data, perform the analyses, generate any visualizations, and write up preliminary findings. The students need to identify any patterns, anomalies, offer suggestions for further analysis, and check its work, of course. But AI is able to assist in those heavy-duty technical aspects, and students are then able to focus more on interpretation and analysis. Again, the blooms where AI can come in and do the lower work. As far as manage it, you can ask for a detailed report on interactions, including specific tasks performed by AI. But again, you're not going to have this detailed log and multiple things submitted that are, printouts of version 1, version 2, version 3. This is what AI did on each of these. Okay, so let's give you a little bit more context on this. The overall goal, I think you got a sense from the last slide, and it's very brief there, and then the objectives. And this is where, and this will show up a little bit later in the presentation, but this is where you're starting to think, okay, students need to know how to use AI for these real world type of analyses, where they're going to be, many of them are going to be in jobs where AI is going to be a partner with them, and they're going to need to know how to use it responsibly. They're going to need to know how to leverage it and also manage it. So this is a way where at this level of course, you can start getting students to work in more of a real world analysis type situation. Okay, so what they're doing with the data cleaning, the exploratory data analysis, checking the statistical analysis, 10 to 12 page report. And again, in this case, there is a reflective commentary of 2 to 3 pages, because you want them to still be thinking about how they used the AI and what it enabled, and then where they needed to step in. Where did they find any errors, any hallucinations, or any gaps? Jonah, we're going to give a link to the entire bundle of all these resources, the ones I'm sharing plus more, 20-something detailed examples like this. We're going to give that link in just a little bit. And again, it'll come with the recording and the slide deck. But yeah, just hold off a little bit longer. Rather than doing this one at a time into the chat, which could be distracting, we're going to just give you the bundle. Okay, so that's the statistics example. There you can see marketing campaign. That one is fun. That one is creative. The financial analysis research paper. Creative writing is another great one, working with AI and creative writing. Hopefully some of those ideas will resonate with you. Okay, the last level, level 5, and again, this is new to the scale. This is AI exploration, and this is where you're purposely trying to push AI to help you get creative and push boundaries on some of the thinking in the context or the discipline or the domain. They might students and educators might co-design, assessments to explore unique applications within their field of study. It may or may not involve students and the instructor collaborating, but we'll just focus on the student for now on this one. So let's look at a historical analysis essay. So history at different levels. So they're supposed to write an analytical essay on the causes and consequences of a major historical event using AI to co-explore new perspectives and innovative interpretations. So they're taking the official account of what happened in historical events. Now through AI, they're going to be thinking, well, what if at this step, this treaty was or wasn't signed, or this outcome was different, this country won, or this moved over here. So this gets really creative and gets them thinking very deeply. And this is, very tip of blooms when you're doing this type of thing. So constructive use, they're challenging conventional historical narratives, not saying that they're false, but again, trying to think where could things have gone. And they're going to engage with those alternative viewpoints, and they're going to try and analyze those and see if that's the best interpretation, or they can add to that and reflect on that. Okay, so we're looking at modern European history, the assignment title, so the innovative analysis of the causes and consequences of the French Revolution. So again, with AI, they're going to be thinking, okay, here's what we have as the official historical document of the chain of events, the timeline, what took place where, who was involved, what if any of those changed. So conduct a research on the French Revolution using both primary and secondary sources, but then use AI tools creatively to explore new angles or uncover hidden connections. This is really engaging. If you haven't done this before with AI and just putting in a particular event and asking it to think of additional outcomes based on a change to what took place in that moment, it's pretty interesting. Okay, and then AI-driven analysis and outline creation. And then it's going to work with them to draft, okay, this is where the timeline at that point could have branched off completely, and how things could have been different in that country, in that region, in the world because of this. Short-term and long-term, all sorts of things can be extrapolated by working with AI to get creative. Okay, looking at chat. Yes, the fact that, is it Vishal shared that they're putting this information into their assessments because if it's back there in the syllabus, that students don't revisit the syllabus necessarily to remember how they should or shouldn't be using AI, and it's not specific enough. So good recall there on that one. Okay, the final submission, 10 to 12 pages, double spaced. Again, you can set your criteria there. Include an appendix with your original outline, AI-generated insights, simulations, or alternative scenarios. Again, if they're using multimodal AI, they can have it even create visuals that would be different from the documented history, the current history. They can create visuals of these new outcomes. It can create, as you know, with Notebook LM and things like that, and create a podcast where it's interviewing a historical figure from the revolution, and maybe with this new outcome in that figure and how they're leading in a different way or whatever it might be. Yes, Rose, we'll be sharing the slides, recording, and a link to all these resources toward the end. Thank you. Okay, so that's a look at level 5, that creative exploration. And I think that's a real exciting one. And again, you want to make sure that it fits your needs toward your course outcomes, and that your students are at this level of readiness, meaning they've already shown their skills in writing and analysis at the levels before this, and now they're able to branch out and get more creative and innovative. Okay, and that is sort of a segue. Here are a few other examples, but that's sort of a segue into the next section of the presentation. And do a time check, we're good. So after the one we did on August 14th on the prior AIS scale, at the end of every webinar, we asked people to just give us some feedback. And one of the suggestions was, those are great individual examples. Could you show one assignment across the 5 levels? So more of a cross section of what an assignment would look like at the different levels. So I thought, okay, that's great. I love that type of input. I like to respond and always try and create when somebody's made a suggestion. So I actually looked at one type of assignment across the 5 levels, and I'll just give a quick walkthrough of what that looks like. And the most common one out there that I found was research paper. I'm just going to call it general research paper, but that applies to pretty much all disciplines that can be done at different levels. So column 1 is the 5 levels that you've already seen, nothing new there, except that there's a little bit of context around the research paper. So no AI use, it's entirely the students independently. To level 2, it can start helping them with brainstorming, outlining, and organizing their ideas for the paper. Level 3, it helps them with drafting or refining sections. Students revise that, and they do so critically. Level 4, AI generates significant sections, so lit review could be done almost entirely for the student. They should then fact check it simply. Students critique and refine any of the AI outputs for the research paper. And then the last one, again, where it becomes a creative collaborator. So if we look at the right side, that's where you can start looking at the reflection or the proof from the student that you might want to think about or require, so that you can kind of keep them level set, so to speak. Okay, and I'll just pause there because we'll get into looking at the why of the different levels. And that's what I liked about doing this cross-sectional example. The sort of challenge that was put before me is getting into the why across the 5 levels for this one example. Okay. I'm going to bring chat back up and just make sure I don't miss anything significant here. Okay. Just checking in briefly over there. Okay. So let me go ahead and look at research paper, why you might choose level 1. You want students to demonstrate mastery of basic research and writing skills. They need to demonstrate that at certain early levels. Then you can ensure that they're able to independently analyze and critique their resources. You're preparing them for future assignments where AI might play a more significant role. Okay, so grounding them in essential skills. Again, this will depend if you're at a 200 level course versus 300, 400 grad. You might choose level 1 more so at the lower levels to make sure that they're showing those skills, or earlier on in the term. Okay, with level 2 in research paper, you want to support students in the planning stage while still encouraging independent research and writing. So this works well in courses where students may face difficulty structuring the complex ideas, but need to develop confidence in their analytical abilities. So you want to model effective planning strategies that students can adopt in future, more advanced projects. Okay, and for this third one, you want students to critically engage with AI tools, learning how to evaluate and refine AI-generated content. So this is more for courses that emphasize revision and iterative writing processes. Okay, you're preparing students for a real-world collaboration with AI, which will be common practice in professional environments, some more than others, of course, but more and more common. Okay, and then level 4, you want to focus on developing students' ability to work with AI tools for large-scale data analysis or writing tasks. It's supporting students who are ready for more complex assignments but need guidance and practice critiquing AI-generated content. So these are students who you're training to direct AI tools more effectively. They could be in disciplines that are more likely leading to higher levels of AI use in, say, research-based professions. I see perplexity coming up. We've done a session on that before. Perplexity is a great thing for research tasks. And I tend in these sessions to kind of focus, in ChatGPT, but talking Gen AI in general. There's also all sorts of tool matrices out there for different types of tasks. Let's see. For level 5, you want students to push the boundaries of traditional research and explore how AI can enhance creativity and problem solving. It's going to help them think of possibly a research technique or paradigm that hasn't quite been addressed yet. And so they can creatively think about that. Different population, different solution, different hypotheses, whatever it might be. This is more for advanced students who are ready to engage in creative exploration and co-design with AI. So they've got that skill set. It's not just a higher level course, but it has to be known that they've got that AI skill set or support to help them through the process. So more for cutting edge fields and disciplines as a potential here. So that's a cross section of a research paper across the 5 levels and how it might differ, and also why. Let's see. What will be the lecturer's workload levels like for each of this AI assessment level? Yeah, so that's something to reflect on as well, as if you're putting more on students for accountability. I'll back up here, we won't get to the Padlet quite yet. And you've got more than to review. What is the workload process there? So how are you accounting for that and adjusting for that? Absolutely. Great question. And then question, can you talk about students' prerequisite skills of using AI for different levels of assessments? Yeah, and so that's something where we need to know what, and that's something that can be a conversation at the campus level, at the program level is, okay, if you're bringing in these AI, these assessments with different levels of AI, are your students ready? And or are they being supported in the process properly? How much of that does or doesn't fall on you as the instructor? How much is support services on your campus, for example? It's going to depend on the level of your course and your discipline, how much students are engaged or should be engaged with AI. But that level of readiness is something you need to definitely take into consideration. We know that many more students are using AI than instructors, but are they using it effectively, appropriately, ethically? Those are the types of things we need to model for them and talk about with them. So yeah, having those conversations at the campus level, but even more so at the program level about student AI use, readiness and support, and ethical use. Those are important. And I see question about share your view on ChatGPT versus Gemini versus Perplexity. I'm much more deeply knowledgeable and skilled with ChatGPT. I've been using that all along and using the most modern or current versions. Gemini, I've tried to keep up with. I use it as a cross-check. And then Perplexity, I use that if I'm going deep into, let's say, research design, then I'll spend time in Perplexity. But I tend to live in ChatGPT 80% or more of the time. That's my preference. That's my comfort zone. And it maps most closely to my work. So it's really, and others in here can share how the other LLMs and tools have linked to tasks that they do. Feel free to share that as well, because we all have different skill sets. We all have different work that we do. Some might be more involved in research and analysis, some more involved in writing. Some are at teaching first institutions, some are ones. Yeah, and the question, how can we tell whether students follow the AI level stated and not go beyond that? Yeah, that's, again, within each of those examples where you're trying to direct them with language that's telling the intended use, and then having the elements of the submissions that are designed to hold them accountable to that level. It's never going to be perfect. You can't over struggle and expend all your energy trying to make it perfect. But you want to have that best alignment possible by you guiding it through the assignment design, and then also reviewing what they've submitted. And you knowing the student helps, knowing their voice helps, bringing in personal context helps. There are a lot of different things you can do to try and create that as close to perfect model as possible, but it's not going to ever be perfect. Okay, let's go as we're nearing sort of the end of time here. I want to be able to, we've had great sharing in chat. I really appreciate that. I've only seen a small part of it, but they've been great questions and great comments across the group, which is always good to see. Let's go to the Padlet here, which you have a link to in the chat. And let's try and document in some of your thoughts related to today's session and topic. So ways you've already incorporated AI, how could you share that with your assessments? So we're looking at your status with AI and assessments. So what are some ways you've already been incorporating AI? What have you found to work well? What did you incorporate and maybe it didn't work well? Thinking today based on what was shared through the presentation and through your colleagues, your community, what are some ideas or opportunities that you see with your assessments? And then ongoing concerns. Oh, of course, that's populating first. Lack of teacher training. I would go, I see centers for teaching and learning charged with doing this, but not necessarily given enough resources. At the same time, instructors not given enough space and acknowledgement of the time and skill building that this takes. The AI literacy and skill building that this takes is significant to do this effectively. And so we're here again, almost 2 years since Gen AI has come out, but we're looking at very small uptake by instructors and their uses in their courses. So yeah, that is, you could say lack of teacher training, but there is teacher training available at most institutions, but does it meet instructor needs most effectively? Or are the instructors being rewarded or recognized and given the space and time to do that as part of their workload? Because we know levels of burnout are significant. Okay, so let's look at the left-hand column here, ways you've already adopted. And so integrated into the LMS to support content search and adaptive learning. Yeah, as more of it becomes part of the LMS, that's great because then you've got that built-in resource and you've also got built-in documentation of when students used it along the way in their assignment process. So that can all be done within the LMS more effectively as time goes on. Also, you can have the local instance of the LLM, let's say ChatGPT, and that linked with the LMS so that students are in that safe space as far as any personal data and information that they're putting in for their assignment or that they're pulling from the LLM. Okay, I'm gonna scroll down column 1 a little bit further. Let's see. Great, so using ChatGPT to generate VBA code as the first session on spreadsheet modeling. Great, a little technical for me. For creating multiple choice questions, it does a great job. In fact, that's not part of today's session, but it could be another one on assessment is it does create great test banks. If you're giving it the proper context and prompting and objectives and content it's tied to, then it can create great multiple choice, true, false, open-ended type question prompts. Scenario and simulation building, powerful for doing that. Yeah. And that's a great interactive use as an instructor of ChatGPT. It will build creative, powerful scenarios and simulations. Refining old assignments. Yeah. So even copying and pasting an assignment into ChatGPT and saying, analyze this assignment for me. These are my course learning outcomes. If you want to say anything about your students, whatever information you want to add, it's really good at analyzing and giving suggestions on syllabi. We just created, the University of Virginia has a great rubric, and it's a very detailed rubric. It has like an 18-page document that goes with it with a lot of great information on the rubric, the backing of it, the research, the way elements of a syllabus are scored. So we've actually developed a way to use that and have instructors upload their syllabus and be able to have it analyzed according to that rubric and scored and feedback given to them within a minute or less. AI peer reviewer. That's one of the things I meant to mention at the end of level 4 or level 5 is how can you bring in a peer review process of analyzing how students used AI. But again, keeping in mind workload, but whenever you can bring in peer review at those higher levels, that's always a great thing. Assignment redesign, research summarization. I'm going to keep an eye on time. We're wrapping up here, and I want to make sure you get the resource link. You'll have ongoing access to this Padlet as well. So as you're seeing some of the great ideas of your colleagues, know that you can come back here. Because this goes very deep, and there's a resource sharing, great. That column goes pretty deep, and then ideas or opportunities. I'll let you scan on your own here. And then there are always the ongoing concerns that we will continually struggle and evolve with, and hopefully narrow the concerns down to those being very minimal instances as much as possible as we become more AI literate and as our students do as well. Okay, so the Padlet link will come up in the email as well. Thank you. And let me just go toward those of you that like the webinar format. We've now got, I'm thinking probably about 18 to 20 of these related to AI over the last year and a half. And so you've got the link to the Higher AI and Higher Ed playlist of all of our webinars. A lot of great people that have been on these sessions with me. And then we've also got our web page with all of the collated AI resources on the different topics that we've presented on. And what we promised for today is you can actually go and view the entire collection of all of these examples. Again, I've lost count, but I'd say about 25 detailed assignment examples across the different levels that you saw today, the 5 levels. Okay, so I will pause there. I'm gonna look at the chat once again and look for any final thoughts or questions. But I know that we're about out of time. I hope this was worth your time. I hope this was useful. What was presented, the dialogue across your peers, what was shared there, and then also the resources that you're going to be getting out of the link that we gave you. Okay. Any questions or comments? And we do know that we're going to do a couple upcoming sessions, a couple webinars. One is sort of a fall football theme, getting instructors into the game. Sort of what was in that Padlet middle column is more support for instructors. So we're going to talk about strategies at the institutional level and on down, how more instructors can be brought into the game. And so we'll be playing with that theme of fall and football, but the context of what many of you are dealing with trying to become more AI literate, more skilled with AI, and passing that on to your students. Okay, well, that ends our session. Thank you, everybody.